fam.news.
For the first time ever soon, we will be able to use science to get credit for what's used inside of mattresses, those wonderful materials we put so much stock in. GoodBed has partnered with Dow, yes, one of the world's leading material science companies, to develop this landmark testing program. Plus, shocking news about which giant media company is now the #1 driver of affiliate sales in the mattress industry. You're not going to believe who it is. The founder and CEO of GoodBed.com, Mike Magnuson, is here, and the Fam Podcast starts right now. Hey, are you a mattress retailer looking to supercharge your business? Introducing Podium, your secret weapon. I use it. I'm a huge fan of it. And with Podium's AI-powered lead conversion, you can engage with customers in seconds via text, making it feel like they're talking to a friend. But hey, that's just the beginning. Podium offers texting, payments, reviews, website chat, and more, all in one place. You've got to be the most responsive retailer to help customers solve those sleep problems in the moment. Harness the power of Podium today and start growing your business. Visit podium.com right now to learn more.
Welcome to the Fam Podcast with Mark Kinsley. This is where the best in the bedding business get even better.
What's up, fam? It's Mark Kinsley. Welcome to the pod. I'm here with longtime friend of the show, longtime friend of the fam, longtime friend of Kinsley's, Mike Magnuson. Good to see you. Looking good, man.
Great to see you. You're looking good. I like the backwards hat.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be revealed here. I wore this hat for a reason, because on the other side is where we're having Dream Camp 2025 coming up in April of 2025. I wanted to do a big reveal.
Is that being flipped around in this episode, or is that kind of teased out for a future episode? What do you think?
We're going to do. We actually revealed where we're having it at Sleep Summit, which happened earlier this month. I can reveal it now. You just tell me when you want the big reveal.
Let's let people wait a little bit, I think. I mean, okay. I'd like to know, but I feel like we should make people wait a little bit, like tease it out.
If I got to call you out, since you walked right into this one, but I think the only industry event you've ever paid to attend is Dream Camp.
True story.
I belong on the main stage. I'm Mike Magnuson. I don't need to hand over dollars to be here. Should be paying me.
That's I would never put it that way, but there's a factual statement that you said earlier.
Well, I do appreciate the early support for Dream Camp. This is going to be number 5 officially. So we're going to be heading. Well, I'll tell you here in a minute. And it's on the other side of this hat. It's a really funny story, by the way, about this property. It's a AAA 5-diamond hotel that we're going to be at. And it's like this really cool campus. That's all I'm giving away right now. Mags, hey, congratulations, first of all, on this program and this partnership with Dow. Yes, we're talking about that Dow. Huge company, a leader in material science and beyond. What is the backstory here? How did this develop? I know that you, for many years, have talked about creating an evidence-based environment where we can truly understand what the material is doing in a mattress and performance metrics attached to that. How do you measure comfort? We've had conversations like this for years. Give us the backstory on what led 100%. To this partnership with Dow.
Yeah, well, great question. I mean, basically, like you said, we've been trying to figure this out for years. It doesn't quite go back to the very beginning of GoodBed, but pretty early on, we started with this consumer review platform and became quickly the largest consumer review platform for mattresses, as you know. But then I quickly realized that would be insufficient for ultimately what consumers need, that they did need standardized information about products in a way that consumer reviews could never provide. And there were many facets of each product that they needed to understand to be able to kind of look across their choices and find mattresses that were going to be a good option for them. And so in the kind of mid 2010s is when the online stuff kind of kicked in, and a bunch of people started kind of hanging a shingle on YouTube saying like, we review mattresses, or I'm a mattress expert. And the content started to get a lot of views, but it was nothing short of garbage in terms of its meaningfulness or usefulness or substance. Basically, it was somebody lying on a mattress going like, I think this is comfortable, something like really subjective. And then it was, of course, like, click my link to buy it. So we decided ultimately we had to provide content in that forum, but that it was certainly not going to look like that, because that's not what I'm going to spend my time doing. So the question became, how do we sort of review a mattress or explain a mattress in a way that is true to the number one thing that I think everyone needs to know about mattresses, which is that they're highly personal. There's no one mattress that's good for everyone. There's no such thing as the best mattress or so forth. So how do we do that? And how do we also acknowledge the fact that they are such a subjective purchase, right? Comfort being the most obvious example of what is so subjective about mattresses. And so that led us down a path of trying to define the characteristics of a mattress that can be objectively measured. And it turns out that there are many characteristics. In fact, we measure about 55 characteristics in each mattress that can be objectively measured. And yet, some of those characteristics are subjective. For example, so comfort is going to be a function of several different factors that can be objectively measured. It'll just be things that you either like or don't like. That's the subjective part. But how soft it is up on the surface, how soft it is kind of underneath that, how much it conforms to your body, giving you that sleeping in your mattress versus on your mattress, how much memory feel, delayed response or delayed recovery it has, how much bounce it has. All of these things can be objectively measured, but we can't say that they're better or worse. That's up to you, right? That's the subjective part. But nonetheless, the measurements, the characteristics underlying those subjective judgments are objective and measurable. And so that's what we figured out. And we started to catalog these characteristics, and that ultimately became what we called mattress DNA. And so we started to basically, in our reviews, from the very first review we ever did, we put the information out in that way, which is now kind of the way that if you ever see a mattress review, they pretty much all follow that template now that we created. But basically, we put the information out in that way. We summarize it a little bit. We don't give people 55 different numbers. We kind of consolidate them to make it a little bit more digestible. But what we were doing is trying to measure these things as accurately, precisely, and consistently as we could, subject to the limitations of what we had available to us, what we could kind of create in terms of testing equipment or afford, or to the extent that it was even just using my body as the instruments. We were limited in that regard, but nonetheless, we did our best to measure these things as objectively as possible. So fast forward to the early part of the pandemic, and Dow had created what it calls the Comfort Science Studio. And this Comfort Science Studio is a full laboratory filled with lots of great equipment and staffed by incredibly smart scientists. And we kind of got joined up with them, and they sort of we found them, they found us. And right sort of in the early days after they had announced this, we kind of came together and realized how incredibly synergistic a partnership or a collaboration might be between us, because essentially they were looking to use this studio to better understand some of the key products that Dow ultimately supports with its material science, but they weren't necessarily experts in any of those specific products, and mattresses was such a perfect one to start with. And it was sort of, they were in this position where they could measure really anything they wanted, and we were in the position where we knew exactly what we wanted to measure, but couldn't necessarily measure it as accurately or as precisely as we wanted. And that marriage just became immediately evident to both of us, and led to pretty much a collaboration that started shortly after those early meetings. So
what's going to happen? I mean, how are you guys going to go forward? What's the first thing you're going to do? What do you start measuring? How does that get communicated? What's the value proposition downstream to the consumer, for example?
Well, the cool thing is that we're already the answer to that question is already 3.5 years in the rearview mirror. I mean, the first thing we're going to do is what we did 3.5 years ago when we started working on this. At this point, we've already developed. So the first thing we started to do was develop tests. We started to pick the most important of these characteristics and say, or it was kind of a combination of which ones can we measure the easiest and are also the most important. Let's start with those. and we started to just develop tests one after the other. And at this point, we've developed a full battery of tests to measure these different characteristics. And so that work has already been done, and we wanted to do that before we even announced it. So that's been happening kind of behind the scenes for the last 3.5 years, and it has even been informing our reviews that we've been doing to date. We just kind of haven't talked about it publicly. So what we are doing now is letting people know for the first time that this is happening, and this has been happening, and that going forward, the information you're getting from GoodBed is not just a cruder measurement of an objective characteristic like we had been doing, but a much more precise measurement. And in many cases, there's things that we can now directly measure that we really didn't have an ability to directly measure before at all, like temperature as an example. Like that was in the case of temperature, we were providing our estimations based on the materials and our knowledge of like how mattresses are constructed and how that will ultimately affect the sleeper. But it was essentially not a measurement at all. It was an estimation. And
let's go there. That's like one of the biggest issues in the mattress industry that we talk about all the time is temperature, sleeping hot, getting the right microclimate. What has been happening? What was the test that was developed with Dow in the partnership with Dow? What do the devices look like? What do the outputs look like? What are you seeing? What are the results that you're seeing? Without mentioning any specific brands, I want to go nerd here for a moment. Let's get into it.
Yeah. I mean, so I have to be a little bit careful because there's like limits to how much we've sort of decided to disclose at this point in time. But we did, in this case, temperature is one where we actually did publish a scientific paper on this. Came out kind of pretty much coincided with the announcement of the partnership, and it was presented at a polyurethanes conference earlier this month.
Sounds like a
rager.
So
we can talk. What's that? Yes, very, very much crazy party, I'm sure. But so that was presented, and so we can talk a little bit more about this particular area of testing. But essentially, what we did is we developed a test that allowed us to assess both how heat and moisture are going to be experienced on the mattress by the sleeper, right? So essentially, we're putting heat into the mattress, putting moisture into the mattress, and we're looking for an equilibrium wherein we determine the exact amount of heat that a mattress can absorb and sustain without continuing to get hotter, right? You find that equilibrium. So you can just kind of put heat into the mattress and then figure out like, okay, so like for example, if you're doing this on a hammock, you could probably put like 1,000 degrees into that hammock and it's just swept away by the breeze and like doesn't get any hotter, right? That's obviously not going to happen on a mattress. But some mattresses you can imagine are going to have a lot better ability to like take more heat without continuing to kind of like let it build up and allow it to disseminate into the mattress more effectively than others. And so all these characteristics that we hear about when we talk about temperature are effectively captured in this test. So we talk about conductors pulling heat, allowing heat to travel away from your body. You know, obviously to the extent that those are working, then that will be visible. And we can actually see a lot of those features. We can see the effect of like phase change material and things like that in this test.
Well, likewise, we got to go there for a minute because I'm going to ask what everybody's asking, and you can say as much as you can say, but people want to know is it bullshit? I mean, we've been having those conversations in the hallway of Vegas Market for years. Cooling gel and conductive material and graphite and copper and gel beads. People want to know if it does anything, and I think the consensus generally and anecdotally has been, yeah, it might cool you down for a little bit, but then it traps the heat. What say you, Mags?
Okay, well, the answer is not universal, right? So in some cases, and this is part of the reason why
Are you dancing already?
Oh, no. This is the answer. Look, pin me down. The answer is not universal, but this gets to the heart of why this testing is so important. Because one person who says they use phase change material and another person who says they use phase change material sound exactly the same, right? To the consumer, even to the RSA, they sound the same, but they don't always perform the same, right? In some cases, you could see the effect of it and it actually does something. In other cases, it does nothing. So this testing will actually see that and allow companies who are doing things that actually perform benefit to get credit for those things. And this is a particularly big issue right now with what's happening in the industry more broadly, as we look at these large e-commerce platforms that are just gaining a ferocious amount of market share right now by selling low-end products that make all the same claims that higher-end products make. And, consumers are like, man, and they've got a bunch of 5-star ratings and they cost 1/10 the price. Maybe I'll just go with that. And that is a massive existential threat. I've been talking about it on stages since 2019. I started to talk about how ultra cheap mattresses, Amazon, these were existential threats to the industry. Amazon's probably 5x'd its market share since then. So it's unfortunately coming true. And this is a way for the industry, the part of the industry, which is the majority of the industry that is really investing in innovation and investing in quality to get credit for these things. So that's a bit of a sidebar, but it underscores the importance of what we're doing. So getting back to your question about these effects. So sure, phase change material is exactly what you think. When it does work, it does have a limited lifespan, right? It's not going to work all night. And no one really who knows mattresses thinks it would or should. But it does work if it's applied correctly for a period of time that in many cases is long enough for a sleeper to fall asleep. And we can actually visibly see that. So that coolness to the touch that you feel that is tangible is real, and it's visible in the data. Going back to so some of the things that are more like long-term, like gel, like pulling heat away. So some of those things actually also do work. But what we find is that some products, so I mentioned heat and like kind of the thermal regulation and insulation properties, but there's also moisture dissipation, right? And so what we've discovered is some materials can be really, and some constructions can be really effective at one of these tests and not as effective at another. So they can be really good for allowing heat to kind of dissipate into the mattress, but less effective at allowing moisture to do that. So, and maybe can create more moisture buildup. So there can be nuance to these answers where a product, you might need to understand what type of sleeper you are, what type of bedroom climate you're basically operating in. So if you're in a hot, humid environment, you like to keep your bedroom at 76 degrees in Florida in the summer, and maybe sometimes crack the windows and let that humidity come in. Well, you might be actually more concerned about moisture than you are about heat. And so you might be looking for a different type of cooling mattress than someone who is just, they're in the desert, they're in Palm Springs, and they're just worried about because they tend to get hot. Like maybe they're going through something and they get hot during the night. So those two types of people may be looking for a little bit different cooling solutions. And those solutions are going to vary depending on the way the mattress is constructed. And then the last thing I'll say is that I think that also it gets at the heart of your question is it's not always the case. And this is something that, again, that won't surprise anyone in the mattress industry, but it's not always the case that the mattresses that have the most cooling features are going to do the best on these tests, right? In a lot of cases, this comes down to airflow, right? And airflow is a cooling feature and sometimes is marketed as one, but in many cases, it's almost like the absence of the need for cooling features that is more the thing that ultimately carries the day in terms of how a mattress performs on some of these tests. So that is kind of the answer to your question. And what we can do is not only measure these things very precisely mattress by mattress, but we can help put them in context for people who are looking for like, hey, I want a mattress that has like these properties, but I also want it to be as cool as possible. And sometimes those types of properties, like there could be two properties that are at odds with one another, right? Like maybe I want a lot of memory feel, but I also want it to be cool, right? So a lot of times those can be at odds as an example. Well, we can help you determine like ones that have the most memory feel and are also the coolest, have that combination that's going to work best for you. So these are all things that ultimately are going to be incredibly helpful for the consumer, but also, again, I think super helpful for the manufacturers who are trying to just make these products and allow themselves to get credit when they're actually, doing the innovation that they're doing and putting good quality materials into their products. And then the retailers too. The retailers, can you imagine what an incredibly powerful selling tool this is going to be for a retailer? Not to mention the way it can help reduce return rates for the retailer when people are getting what they're expecting to get.
Yes, get what you expect to get. You take it home, and it actually performs the way that you hoped it would. My gosh, if we could reduce return rates, that's a gift to everyone in the industry. As you've been going through the testing, like you said, in some capacity, it's been going on for 3.5 years. What surprised you the most, if anything?
Oh, gosh. I don't know that I have an answer to that off the top of my head. I have to think about that a little bit more.
Let me go a different direction here briefly. Out of the 55 different areas of measurement, is there one that surprised you that, oh my gosh, we do get to measure that, we can measure that? Were there any in that list of 55 that people may not expect to hear about?
Well, I don't think so, because most of these metrics we've been publicly discussing in our reviews for years. So I don't think that they're a big secret. We don't always, like I said, we might take 4 or 5 different things that we measure and roll that up into like a cooling rating. And we might discuss the sub characteristics in a more qualitative way, but not in a quantitative way. So there's nuance there, but even in the qualitative discussion is where we would talk about those. We would talk about, for example, airflow as a subcomponent of cooling, or we would talk about, like in the case of edge support, we would discuss like, oh, this one does this well overall, but it's kind of a blended average of how it performs when your weight is dispersed when lying on the mattress versus when your weight is concentrated when sitting on the edge of the mattress. So we talk about that nuance in our reviews, even when we don't provide the individual characteristic, quantified characteristics in each case. So I do think that there are many things that we are measuring that have never been measured before, though. And one example, one example, I think that the industry has never really had a way to understand is the difference between what we call softness and what we call kind of cushioning depth. Most of the industry has basically grown up on universal testing machines where they're just kind of pressing pressing some amount of force into a mattress and seeing how much it deflects. And so as a result, that's effectively measuring cushioning depth, it's particularly if you run it real slow. But what people experience on the mattress is often very different, which is why it can be kind of a disconnect when you're on a really dense memory foam mattress and they're calling this a plush, and then you sit down on it and it feels like, oh God, it almost knocked the wind out of me when I sat down on this thing because it was so firm. But ultimately it will conform to you because it does have that characteristic of, deflecting, and conforming to your body and giving you maybe more of that cradled sensation, but it doesn't feel what any consumer would describe as soft. So there's this huge disconnect, especially with how common memory foam is as a component. Memory foam tends to have the biggest disconnect between what you'd call conformance and what we'd call softness. So we've been talking about this distinction for years. No one else in the industry has followed suit yet, but now we can finally measure it scientifically. So I think that this will probably become a more accepted nomenclature within the industry to characterize the difference between softness and cushioning depth, and we can measure both distinctly.
That is fascinating, and it is a nuance that really the language that gets used creates that confusion. So if you can, have a lexicon that is adopted by most, and we're using that language with consumers and educating during the purchase cycle, I think that could be really meaningful. Speaking of being meaningful, one thing that hit me as you were describing your testing processes is just the idea of getting manufacturers involved and material components producers involved at an early stage. Is that something that you're offering with your partnership with Dow? For example, could a spring company or a foam manufacturer or a latex producer come to you with either existing product or new innovation and apply some evidence-based feedback and research that they could then use to either inform further product development or refinement, or even use that in marketing?
Yeah, I think all of the above. I think long term, we are open to having all of those conversations. Even in the shorter to medium term, we're open to having those conversations. And in fact, we've already been approached. Like, there are people who, it tends to be people who are more forward thinking, more invested in innovation, and they're interested in these types of collaborations. And so we believe that that's part of the win-win-win that we can create, because ultimately that leads to a win for the manufacturer. It leads to better products in the homes of consumers. So we feel like this is very much consistent with our kind of mission and objectives.
All right, you heard it here. You can reach out to Mike Magnuson and start having those conversations as a component supplier or even a producer who's putting together a finished product and wants to know, is moving this layer up 2 layers going to have a meaningful distinction whenever it comes to heat absorption or the way that somebody experiences cushioning depth or softness? I mean, just having that evidence-based ecosystem gets me really excited. And it kind of goes back to Sleep Summit, because we had Colin Lawler from Sleep Score Labs as one of our speakers. He's the CEO. And I remember having a conversation with him on stage about a published report. It was a research project they did in partnership with Mattress Firm, but they published it. And it was all around what happens to the consumer's sleep experience whenever they get fitted for a pillow versus them choosing the pillow on their own. And by getting fitted for a pillow, it led to 8 hours of increased sleep over the course of a month. That is a huge benefit to somebody who's tired. So I like this idea of being able to, again, encourage this evidence-based ecosystem that establishes trust with the consumer, gives us not marketing messages, but real truth we can share with people. And of course, everybody's experience of that truth could be varied, but at least you have something that bridges that trust gap, which I think is a bit of a chasm right now, especially with what we were talking about earlier, which we're going to get to. The people that get in front of the consumers right now aren't necessarily the good actors of the industry who are experts.
Right. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, I know. I'm all for as much data as we can get. And that doesn't surprise me at all about the pillow study. We've even heard that from retailers that when they do pillow fitting, they have lower return rates, right? Like, it makes sense, because obviously anyone who knows this category knows that your pillow has to fit the combination of you and the mattress you sleep on. It's not like this pillow works for me on any mattress, or this pillow works great with this mattress for any sleeper. No, it's the combination of those two that the pillow has to fit. And so we know that. And so therefore, but consumers don't know that. And they think, oh, I already have a pillow that I like. I don't need a new pillow. I'm only shopping for a mattress. Well, it turns out that your old pillow worked for your old mattress. It's not necessarily going to work for this mattress. So if we get fitted for a pillow when you buy the new mattress, a lot of the problems that you might ultimately have that might cause you to return the mattress won't happen, because they weren't really related to the mattress being wrong. They were related to you using the wrong pillow with that mattress. And so yeah, I'm not surprised at all that that helps.
And that data, I think, is really useful. And I think, gosh, if I'm running a store right now, I just cite the paper and say, we got to get you fitted for a pillow. You could be sacrificing 8 hours of sleep per month. That's an entire night. Let's get you fitted so that you don't have the problems that you just described, Mike. And speaking of that, like, I'm very curious, put on your, crystal ball, get it in front of you. Let's look into it for a moment. How do you see sort of this information that you're going to be gathering up for manufacturers, component suppliers, the mattress industry in partnership with Dow, cascading down to the consumer level? How is it going to show up on websites where people are looking for mattresses? How is it going to show up in POP, for example, that people might be looking at when they walk into a furniture or mattress store to try and buy a bed? How would you see that playing out?
I think that's a little bit to be determined, but what we ultimately want is for this information to reach the consumer through any possible means. So we want this to get to as many people as possible because it's the best information they could have. And so whether that's going to be on the retailer's website or the manufacturer's website or on the POPs that's right on the sales floor, we're open to all of that. And so that all kind of just needs to be figured out. But I mentioned to you that like this to me is the ultimate selling tool, right? Like the retailer, I think the RSA has one of the toughest jobs in this business because they've got to overcome probably the most distrust of anyone in the whole value chain. That the consumer, the distrust the consumer has of an RSA coming in is probably the highest of any anywhere on the value chain. And so they've got to overcome that, and they got to do it in a relatively short amount of time so that they can ultimately advise that consumer and offer their expertise to help them make a good choice so that they don't buy a mattress that they need to return and all that type of thing. And so, so what this gives the RSA is the ability to earn that trust so much more easily. It's like, hey, you don't have to believe, this isn't just my opinion. You don't have to believe that this is like, you don't have to believe this just because I say it's true. You can believe this because an independent third party company has provided this information, and they provide it for all mattresses. And look, here's the data. So I think that's an incredibly powerful way to earn and build trust, as well as to close a sale for an RSA.
Yeah, no more opinions, eliminating opinions, introducing third-party credibility, research-backed science to help people find better sleep. And I'm telling you, people are looking for better sleep. They are on the hunt for it. And by the way, we're not at the top of the list because I think the credibility isn't there. And I think, like you talked about, the trust gap is so wide between the consumer and the RSA. So doing anything we can to close that is going to be meaningful. And it's going to help more people sleep better.
The one thing I would push back on a little is I wouldn't say it's eliminating opinions. I think their opinion is still going to be valuable. It's just that they'll be able to clearly separate fact from opinion. Like, hey, so if you're wondering like which mattress is going to perform the best for this certain type of cooling, or if you're worried about like motion isolation, you want to know which one's going to be better for that. Those types of things can be fact. But my opinion might be like, I also just feel like this particular bed is really comfortable and you might enjoy it. I would like to show it to you. And, I could tell you some of the facts about it while you're on it, but ultimately like some of the subjective stuff, or like I'm looking at your body and I'm thinking, or I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm taking the facts that I know, and I'm thinking, if I put all those facts together, my opinion is that this might be a good match for you. Like there's still room for opinion, but it can be based on facts, and the consumer can kind of know what it is opinion and what is fact. And I think that ultimately, again, just goes to the credibility of the RSA.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. That wasn't me making a distinction of, get rid of opinion altogether, because I think it's really powerful whenever you use a product and you're able to share that experience with people. That's why I'm always telling people, here's what I've got. I got I got a Dr. Weil collection of Pure Care sheets and top of bed that is absolutely game changing. I've got a Bed Tech 6500 adjustable base that's amazing. I'm still rocking the Englander Echelon mattress. Like I love to be able to tell people what I sleep on and my sleep environment. And I think it goes a long way, because people are like, well, if you're using it. And then on top of that, like you said, I've got a lot of happy customers maybe that use this product over here.
Exactly. So there's so much opportunity for, what we want to do is put the facts in as many people's hands as possible and let them they can be the kind of experts on the ground who apply those facts in a way that benefits the consumer who's standing in front of them. And one thing they can count on from us is that we're never going to say, hey, this mattress gets a 4.7 star rating. Like we're not going to ever do that. That's not, we fundamentally think that is always going to be wrong, because it is a personal product. So So you can take the facts, we can equip you with the information and facts about this product, and you can make your own judgments with these. You can make your own, and you could do your own kind of matchmaking with this information, and you can ultimately help the consumer gain confidence in their purchase using this information in the best way that you see fit.
And I think maybe to put a little bit of a bow on it without opening up too much of a Pandora's box, if we don't do something to build value in the products that we have, and if we don't do something to further bridge the trust gap and to make sure that we're delivering meaningful distinctions to the consumer, hey, this is how it works. This is why, we think it works this way. This is the data to support that. We're not going to be able to, as an industry, build value in the products. And the Amazon and the Wayfair of the world, which have about $3 billion in the sub $1,500 category in that segment of the market, are going to continue to Pac-Man market share away. And like you've talked about many times from stage, you're going to essentially make the mattress a throwaway item. You're going to make the mattress, the replacement cycle is going to go way down. We're going to end up with more trash in the landfills, et cetera, et cetera. This is how that plays out, because absent of value, people make a decision on price and stars, sadly.
Yes. Yeah. Amazon gives you two ways to win: star ratings and price. And when it is the case, as it is with mattresses, that cheap products are always going to get good ratings, then you really have only one way to win, which is price. And that's the reason why cheap mattresses are the only mattresses that are ever going to succeed in a meaningful way on Amazon's platform. And it's no coincidence that those are the only mattresses that have succeeded up until this point in any meaningful way on Amazon. And so, yeah, that is the nature of it. And so ultimately, as an industry, I mean, we're at this inflection point. By my math, probably more than half of units are sold in those e-commerce platforms now, which is just astounding and super scary, frankly, for the rest of the industry, I would think. I mean, when you do the math of like how much market share those companies have and those retailers have, and the average price point, I mean, you're calling it sub 1,500, but let's be honest, it's almost all sub 500. And so the average price point of those is a fraction of what the average price point is at, say, Mattress Firm or any other major mattress retailer. So whatever they have in dollar share, they have at least 2x, maybe more, in unit share. And so, yeah, it's a scary amount of consumers that we have lost to that channel. And ultimately, that is a function of the fact that consumers have kind of given up. Many consumers have just kind of given up. They look at consumer reviews and they see all these complaints. They look at the marketing stories. They look identical. They look at the star ratings, and at best, the star ratings are equal. At best, they both have very good star ratings, because we know the cheap ones are always going to have good star ratings, because I can get into that some other time. But so at best, the star ratings
are rated within like 2 days of them getting the product. And
exactly. They come to the house. They ask you a week later to rate it. All at that point you could say is, "Yep, I got it," and it is indeed a mattress. It has met all of my expectations.
I was sleeping on the couch, and this seems better. Yeah. Okay, great.
I opened it up, and it was a mattress. All of my expectations are met. 5 stars. Not to mention the fact that the people who ordered that mattress for $300 are systematically the easiest graders we have. Their expectations were lowest to begin with. So, they're always going to get high ratings because of those two factors. But so at best, you're at parity on ratings. You're at parity, what sounds like parity, on features. And you start to come down to like, okay, well, what are we not at parity on? Oh, price. And so the consumer goes, huh? And especially if they feel like they can't believe what they're reading or hearing from the brands or the stores or whatever, because it's just marketing and there's nothing real behind it. Well, that's how we end up where we are. And so this is the thing that I think can finally allow the industry to kind of push back in a positive way.
It's really going to take the entire industry, though. I mean, you think about how far down in this dark well we are. and there's just a little pinhole of light up there, honestly. Like, it continues to trend in the direction of the Amazon Wayfair monster, just absolutely gobbling up all of the market share. It is trending in that direction. It's not trending in the opposite
100%.
direction. So
No,
if we don't
100%.
do something as an industry, we're going to absolutely erode the average unit selling price, and we're going to have a lot of people continue to be really pissed off at the mattress industry, quite frankly, because they're going to be like, I don't trust mattress people. My mattress sucks. Well, you bought, a rolled up sponge covered in a paper towel. And then they think, well, I can spend another $100 and do a little bit better next time. And incrementally, maybe they, start valuing sleep. But we're pretty far down in the well. And I'm usually the optimist, but guys, half of units being sold through, we'll call it the large e-com channels, is scary territory, and it's not trending in the opposite direction. It's not.
Yeah, 100%. But the one thing I would say though is, it'd be great if the entire industry just, all at once adopted this, and we could kind of push back collectively on it. But it doesn't have to happen that way. The nice thing about this is that this will benefit anyone who adopts it whenever they adopt it. So the first people to kind of get on board and kind of start using this information, whether that's on the sales floor, on their websites, in their marketing, to the extent that they are in any way using this to kind of distinguish their products, they're going to benefit. And so it is kind of the type of thing where this doesn't require a collective action. It just requires individual action. Right. And ultimately, I think when people realize how powerful this can be, more people will choose to adopt it, but early adopters will benefit first and most.
Always. How do people get in touch with you? How do they take a next step from here?
You could always reach out through our website or my email, mike@goodbed.com. And yeah, I'm always happy to talk. So
awesome. Hey, we did two things. We got to pay off a couple of promises here, but would you come back for another round of podcasting where we can talk about, I'm going to reveal it, but the number one and number two biggest drivers of affiliate sales in the mattress industry today online are Forbes and the New York Times. Last time I checked, Forbes, New York Times, not mattress experts. But I wanted to pay that off. But there's such a big thing to unpack with what's happening on the internet. And here's the deal, folks. 85, 90+% of people start their mattress shopping online. And right now, what's happening, the drivers of affiliate sales are these big media companies who have essentially figured out how to make bank. And they're the ones getting in front of consumers. And the reason they're getting in front of consumers is because they can make bank and they can just drive traffic over to whoever's paying them the most. These are the other conditions that we're operating in. So will you come back for round two where we can really unpack this?
Yeah, happy to do it.
Okay. But also I got to reveal. Ready?
Oh boy.
Oh yeah. For those of you listening,
where is this?
I just turned around my hat and it says Pearl
somewhere
on the front.
In the Lone Star State.
We're going to be, Any guesses, Magnuson, on where we're going for Dream Camp?
Pearl. It's got to be Austin. Is it
We're
Austin?
going to San Antonio, sir.
San Antonio. Okay.
That's right.
Nice.
So the Pearl District in San Antonio is an absolute gem. The former family, that's the Pace Picanti family, the president of the company married Mrs. Pace, and they turned this old brewery called Pearl Brewery into this campus with music venues and grocery stores and restaurants and outdoor space. The Culinary Institute of America has its third campus there. Hotel Emma is a AAA 5-diamond hotel where we're going to be staying. And it's just the coolest place. Now, Pearl, why Pearl? Pearl Brewery operated in the building where we're going to be staying, that's now a hotel, until 1993. And so it's this incredible industrial vibe that is unlike anything I've ever experienced in my entire life. When Madonna came to San Antonio, she stayed at Hotel Emma in the Pearl campus, which is where we're going to be. And this year at Dream Camp, we're only taking 40 Okay. We're capping it at 40. It actually got too big last year. And we've already sold so we have 32 slots left. So 8 are gone already. And it's October. I mean, it's not until April. So all the slots are going to fill up. So if you're interested, you can
Awesome.
go over to the Sleep Summit website. But I'm just
had me at
curious if we can
brewery.
get Mags to pay for his second industry event ever.
Yeah, you had me at brewery, so I'm there.
Hey man, thanks for being on the show. It's great to see you. Congratulations on this partnership with Dow. I can't wait to see where it goes, how it impacts the industry. I love digging into some of the science, especially when it's evidence-based. It benefits the consumer. It helps the manufacturers tell a great story. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for continuing to innovate. I think it's huge. And I keep us posted as you move along.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, that was an earnest welcome to people to reach out. So don't think that was an empty invitation. It's a real invitation. Reach out. Let's work together. Let's talk about. I mean, this is all happening in real time. So, we want to talk to folks who see the opportunity the way we see it.
Well, you're always one of my favorite people to talk to, and thanks for doing what you're doing. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify or even on YouTube, checking out the Pearl Hat, be sure to subscribe, give us a thumbs up, give us a like, share it with a friend, and let them know what's going on in the industry because together we're better. And thank you so much for tuning in to the FAM Podcast.